All right, well, hello. My name is Nick, and I'd like to welcome you to the first ever Accent Consulting show. I'm here with Accent Consulting owner and founder Phil Wright. Phil, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Really excited that you're here and excited to sort of be able to deliver a brand new content format. We hope you like it. If you do, let us know in the comments and all those sorts of things. This is going to be on YouTube, Phil, so it's the like and subscribe and comment.
Gotcha.
We're like the new Mr. Beast, basically.
Okay.
That's I don't know if we're going to lure people into risking their lives for money.
Let's see.
All right. Well, so this is a new content format, like we said, and we're doing it for the new year. It's a new year. Happy New Year, Phil.
Yes.
Are you a resolutions guy?
Absolutely.
What's your resolution?
Do better.
Do better. That's a great mantra. I was thinking about it. I didn't really set one for this year. I tried to read more books last year.
Yeah.
And I think I read like 6.
Okay.
I wanted to do one a month.
Yeah.
But that didn't work out.
Okay.
Because like movies.
Maybe this year.
Netflix and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but we are here kind of focusing on the new year and really kind of the opportunity to bring practical IT solutions with you in a business context. So we frame this under something we're calling Rethink, Retool, Reset. So we kind of want to dig into that, but really technology evolves fast, right, Phil? So the nice thing about the new year, actually one of the books I read this year, Katie Milkman talked about how, new month, new year, it sort of gives you a nice opportunity to sort of step back and reevaluate priorities. And so that's kind of what we're going to do today, because as technology shifts and evolves, it's easy to kind of chase the shiny new things. I think we'll talk about that a little bit, but we want to create stability and create enhanced productivity to with your resolution, do better, right?
Yeah.
So, Phil, let's dive right in here as we think about this. Tell us about Accent Consulting and some of the challenges that you're seeing companies really kind of face right now.
Sure. Accent Consulting, we've been in business for 23 years. We have clients all across the U.S. and some in Europe. Most of our clients have roots to Indiana, and that's where we have our offices. But we're an outsourced IT service company. So we do everything from help desk to cybersecurity, systems and cloud work, and a little bit of custom development, and really everything in between. Some of our clients are what we call fully managed, where we really manage the entire environment. And then we have some that are co-managed, where they have people in-house that are also IT people, and we just help augment what they do. But to answer your question, what are the challenges I think that companies are facing today? I think it's really AI adoption. Yeah. I think that's a big one. That's obviously changing everything for all companies, and some companies don't really have a strategy for that.
Sure.
They don't know what to do. I think automation is another thing that's always on the list of things that people can improve upon in the organization.
Let's actually pause there for a second. In your mind, what's the difference between automation and AI? How are they connected? Where do they differentiate?
Yeah, I think they can be connected. They're not always. So AI is typically what we think of large language models, right? So your ChatGPTs, your agentic type of models, something that's really thinking out a process and delivering you the outcome of that task. Automation's more of you have a process that maybe a human normally does it, but now you've written some code that will do that whole function for the human by clicking a button, for example. So they're kind of two different things, but often you find that they work together, because if you take AI and automation, it's a superpower.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I think that gives us some great context for our first topic today, which is the first phase, Rethink. So, rethinking IT strategy is really kind of about taking inventory, right? You want to look at your goals, you want to look at your systems, and I think even for some people, really kind of reevaluating what IT should be doing, right? If you're paying for IT service, what value is that bringing? I think that, too often small and medium-sized businesses, they're adding tools faster than they add value, right? And I think that they're, some are simply evaluating their IT provider or their IT environment based on how much it costs to support, or, just how often things are running or not running. And that's kind of oversimplified, because I think you and I know that when IT is running really well, it's actually a maximizer. It enhances productivity and ROI and efficiency, through automation and AI and some of those things. So let's kind of stick there for a moment and think about, Phil, when you're working with companies, What's the biggest mindset shift that people have to go through before they, really start thinking about their technology goals? Like if everything works, people don't like change, right? We understand that. And so, if you're going to stop and maybe just evaluate, where does that mindset shift have to happen?
Is there a pain? Like, is what they're doing right now working, or is there a better way of doing it? Like, is there friction in the organization by doing it this way, and is there a better way to do it? So ultimately, I think of it as, is it working or not?
Yeah.
And are you putting Band-Aids on that old process rather than improving that if needed? So, but also, like, is it giving you for the cost, or are you getting the productivity value out of it?
Yeah, well, I think that's a big difference, right? Because if you're thinking about, like, does it work like with me,
right,
or does it work sort of in spite of itself,
yeah,
right? So, so that's a great kind of thing. As you've worked with clients, and like you said, you've been doing this for 23 years. What are some of the telltale signs that a company might be experiencing where they might need to really focus on stopping and sort of starting that evaluation process?
I think that if the costs are still rising but the productivity is not rising, I think that's a big indicator that maybe you should evaluate other options.
Yeah,
I think, but ultimately, to me, it does the current system, is it modernized, is it reliable, is it secure, and then is the alternative better, and is it meet those requirements, and are you getting the productivity gain from it?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting, like, thinking about those two things moving in sync with each other, right? Because cost, I mean, obviously, everything's getting more expensive these days, and so if you're thinking about it in terms of being in lockstep with productivity or ROI, and sometimes you have to step back and do some research, right? Think through the process and rethink it all. Obviously, as we think through this, and you've been in IT a long time, right? You've told me about something that we call shiny SaaS syndrome, software as a service. How do you think that leaders can stay focused, I guess? Like, with all the new things that are out there, and AI certainly, foremost among them, how can they stay current and really kind of stay focused on keeping their cost in line with, their profitability or efficiency or whatever else, without falling for every new pitch, right? Because you're online, you're on LinkedIn, you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, whatever, and every third or fourth thing is an ad, right? And you've experienced that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, shiny SaaS syndrome is something that really plagues the IT industry, like IT companies like us, where they're constantly seeing new vendors come up with a slightly better product, and they immediately want to implement that and then deploy it to their clients. But those incremental improvements are not necessarily enough justification sometimes to constantly keep switching. So I don't see it a ton in most of the SMBs that we support, like where they're constantly changing things.
It's probably almost the opposite, right?
I think it is. I think in many cases they might stay with something too long. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, like, if a company hasn't reviewed their tech stack in a while, what's an easy entry point? Like, what's a place where they can get started without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah. I think the easy one would be like, what's your spend on, right? Are you, look at your licensing. Are you, do you have duplicate software out there that you're using that does the exact same thing, and you're paying for 3 different products to do the same thing? Trimming it down, making sure you're right sizing your software to the right people, right? That can help a lot. And purge out the apps that you don't need.
So you're saying that basically, like, it may be a limitation kind of thing where you're paying for X number of licenses, but only X number of people, which is likely smaller, are actually using it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Or maybe like you have the for most of the users, you have the highest level of the plan, but maybe for half the users, you don't need all those features. So like there's some ability to trim that
and to scale it, right? And sort of right size. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples that come to mind? And it's okay if you don't, but like, do you have any examples in mind of clients that we've worked with over time? Again, you've done this like a couple of decades now, where just stopping to pause and kind of reevaluate that process, where it was able to either save them a bunch of money or create a bunch of money, like in terms of revenue.
Absolutely. Constantly. I mean, like, we've been doing this 23 years. So like every year we're working with our clients and trying to figure out ways to optimize things. But, more recently, I think there's been a number of licensing audits we've done for clients. And, with some of them, the larger ones, I mean, there's, hundreds of thousands of dollars over years that can be saved by, and have been saved by trimming that. And I think also just, a lot of the clients we work with today have fully or mostly embraced the cloud. But that transition of taking them from the on-premise equipment, like the servers and all that heavy infrastructure that was at their building, and then moving that in the cloud, that's also saved a lot of money by rethinking how you do that.
Yeah.
And there's still some clients out there or some prospects that we talk to that haven't done that yet.
Yeah. Well, I think it's scary, right? We've talked about change is hard, but I think that it's like anything else. If you can physically touch it and it just feels different.
It does.
Maybe there's security in that, but what you're gaining and maybe in that emotional sort of sentiment, you're losing in revenue and I guess even increasing risk in some ways, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, okay, so that's the essence of our first phase, the rethink phase, sort of reflecting before reacting and making sure that, IT is really driven by business value outcomes. Once you've done that, I think, moving into the retool phase is what we think about next. So let's talk about that, and this is the part I think people get excited about because we talked about shiny SaaS syndrome, software as a service, but like new systems, new toys, new things to play with, right? But it's also, I think, one of the places where things can really go sideways.
Yep.
So, Phil, when you're advising clients where we're meeting with new people, how do you know if it's time to replace or simply refine what they might already have?
Yeah, I think it depends what it is.
Yeah.
Like if it's pre-built software, that I'll use like QuickBooks and some of the Microsoft tools as an example of that. Those are more tools that you could maybe look for a replacement in some capacity, because they're purpose-built and they service a very specific solution. But when you start getting to more like custom apps that are maybe like industry specific, and every client that we support in pretty much every industry, they have like their apps that they use that are really specific to their industry. Those are a little bit more difficult,
sure,
right? And especially if the client has developed some of that on their own, like they've built their own systems on top of it through custom development and stuff. So, I mean, it still boils down to, I think, to the same questions that we were talking about earlier, which is like, is the system working? Is there a better alternative? And if there is a better alternative, is it worth the energy and effort and cost to do that migration to move to that new future state? And if it doesn't have that productivity gains, then it probably is not going to make a lot of sense.
Sure. I want to pivot back to where we started. You talked about, in your view, the challenges people are facing are in automation and AI adoption. We talked a little bit about cloud migration and those sorts of things. How are those platforms and opportunities really changing the game for the clients that we're working with currently?
I think that like of the companies that implement like cloud, it's reduced their cost. I mean, I think that's a big factor. I mean, like we had some larger clients that had a lot of server infrastructure on premise, almost 100 servers. And over a course of a couple of years, we trimmed that. We moved a lot of it into the Microsoft 365, and for them it saved a ton of money because servers are expensive. $10,000, $20,000 depending on what it's doing, and maybe even more. And they had servers at every single one of the locations, right? So I think for SMB that's not leveraging cloud, they're making a big mistake. There are obviously some edge cases where they have maybe something proprietary, they have to keep some stuff on premise, but I think where possible, moving cloud, it tends to usually be a better ROI for the clients.
Well, let's pro and con that real quick, right? So obviously cost savings, big factor.
Yeah.
And I think also, and you could probably speak more to this than I can certainly, but as you think about just reliability, right? Reliability of on-prem versus a cloud.
Yep.
And sure, like cloud isn't perfect,
yep.
right? Like
there will be downtime in
whether you're operating on somebody else's systems,
exactly.
Elsewhere. But I think there's also value in that, right? And we talked a little bit about that in the lead up to this, where if you're all on-prem and you've got server racks on server racks, I think there's some efficiency in terms of speed as well, right, with cloud?
Yeah, most usually.
Yeah.
Usually, like often the time that we see a client, transitioning to the cloud is usually there's a technology recycle or like a life cycle that's coming to an end. So maybe their servers are aging out, or their old software vendors going out of business, or they're moving their tool to the cloud, that's often a good time to make a transition. Is at those cycles.
Yeah. These are great insights, and I think that as you think about really retooling, again, we could pivot back to the shiny SaaS kind of thing. But how do clients really evaluate, and what process would we take them through in terms of whether or not a full retool is essential, or if we're just kind of maybe make a few tweaks, maybe right size some things, scale some things. Like, is there typically a common factor that we're looking at there?
So, if you have multiple tools doing the same thing and you're trying to decide which one is the one to stay with, I think the thing to look at would be which one is most integrated with the rest of your data.
Oh, I see.
Right? Does it have really good integrations, or is it just an island where this app resides? So I think evaluating the tools and the apps that you're using based on that, I think can help make some insight. Yeah. And then ultimately, the vendor that has the software that builds it, are they reliable? Are they going to be around for a while? They're going to be around in 10 years. That's something that some people don't think about either, especially with all the new AI apps out there. And there's companies out there just using these new platforms, and they're a startup, and you don't they're putting all their data
right?
in it. Roll the dice. But no, I think in general it's is there a lot of, where's the data stored at? Is it easy to access? Is this creating more fragmentation of your data? And if you can find one that's more integrated with everything, I think that's a better product usually.
Well, that's really helpful insight, I think. And I think that, the sort of through line there is intentionality, right? You don't just go at these things without really processing through it, doing the evaluation process, and like you said, trying to understand integrations or whatever else it might be. But one of the things that we're good at, I think, where we've made our claim, in terms of helping our clients, is really guiding them through that process. So appreciate that insight. So our next phase here is reset. Right. So, you can go through the process of evaluating and maybe even do some retooling or right sizing, but then you want to bring stability, right? Ideally, especially in an IT sense, stability is everything. Yep. You want to make sure it's going to work, and it's going to be, it's going to do the job that you're, paying to do. So, once your IT systems are aligned and updated, Phil, how do you keep things consistent and kind of prevent that drift that may happen?
Software is a moving target, right? So there's security risks with software that doesn't get updated. So periodically you got to make sure that that's up to date. I like to think of it as if you're doing a pen test from time to time in the organization.
For the non-technical.
Yeah. Okay. So pen test would be it's like a security penetration test. You're testing your security posture from a hacker's perspective, both outside your office as well as inside your office. That often will bring some insight of if you have some gaps, or at least what areas you should work toward to fortify and make more secure. Yeah.
And so that's another, I think, value of working with an IT provider like Accent is, their ability to kind of do that and not only run the test, but also interpret the outcome of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? What other sort of maintenance or check-ins should, SMBs be thinking about as standard practice?
So SMBs as a whole, I think you always want to make sure you have good backups. Right, that's important, and I think you should pressure your IT provider to prove to you that you have good backups. Obviously, if you have a disaster, whether it be the building burning down or a cyber attack, you got to make sure that the data that you have is restorable and working. So I think that's something that annually is a good practice to have them demonstrate that it works. I think that having a good disaster recovery plan, something documented of what you do in certain circumstances, is a really important thing. The pen test I mentioned, I think is good. It's not needed for all organizations, but if you're in healthcare or some of these other highly regulated industries, it's wise to do that, maybe at least an annual basis. But doing also just a cybersecurity risk assessment. Sure. See where you're at is always a good option.
I think also, and one of the things that we do with our clients, we call them ITBRs, an IT business review. These happen multiple times a year with I mean, all of our clients. So we're sitting down and kind of walking them through, what challenges they're facing, what sort of upgrades may be required, or those sorts of things. And I think the value in that is it's intentional, it's data driven. I think it kind of flexes one of our native strengths in that consulting area, right? We are Accent Consulting after all. And so I think a lot of people, they look at their IT provider or just IT providers in general, and they're like, oh, well, if something breaks, they can, fix my printer or change my password or whatever else. But I think at our level, and one of the things, the additional areas of value we offer is in that consultative relationship. So talk about ITBRs a little bit. Like what's the kind of primary benefit?
So ITBR stands for IT Business Review. We like to do it 4 times a year. Some clients prefer a little bit less, but once a quarter is an ideal interval that we like to see with most of our clients. The whole point of it is really to make sure we're aligned and that we're planning ahead. So often we'll do forecasting as far as budgets for your IT infrastructure, like if there's updates or changes. We like to share new technologies that we've learned that are worth looking at. We'll have some that are more security focused, so you know where you stand from a security posture. But it's a great time to sync up, make sure that we understand your business and what's changed in your business since the last interval we met, and then also share new insights of what we've learned since we last met, and if there's some new tools or new methods to do things and to evaluate it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key sort of values, for us is we want to measure your IT performance beyond just how often things are breaking or working or whatever else, right? We talked about this a little bit in the opening, but I think people with IT, again, I think there's just the expectation that it's just going to be, it works or it doesn't work. But there's so much more on the table if you're really doing it well, because whether it's AI or automation or just, integration across platforms, the ability to make work happen more efficiently and more productively, I mean, that's what every business wants, right? So big ad there. But I'm curious, as you think about, sort of resetting expectations at a leadership level, I think that's maybe not easier, but I think, it's maybe more natural, but then you have to deliver it, right? And we talked about, companies that might bring in new tools and they do too much too quickly. And, what role do you think employee training takes in all of this? Because, and obviously it's going to scale across companies depending on their size, but, you've done this a long time. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if it's, I think employee training is great. I think it's necessary in many ways. I think that when like cybersecurity awareness training, that's a big one that I think most companies are familiar with, where you're having people go through security awareness training, so they're not the ones getting tricked by the hackers for a phishing email, right? Sure. So that's a real simple version of it. But I think as an organization implements new tools or new processes, you got to train people how to use it and how to leverage it. Otherwise, they're not going to leverage it, and they're going to go back to their defaults, right? They're going to go back to the old way of how they did things. So I think having a method or a process internally of how you train your people is really important, and documenting it well.
Yeah, documentation is key. Because as turnover happens and people come and go and processes change, you're like, well, what were we doing there? So documentation is huge. I'm kind of curious, and I actually, I just sat down with one of our clients and talked through their history with Accent, and they were talking about how their confidence in our ability to provide solutions like this and to iterate through ideas and kind of brainstorm together. They talked about how that was helping them build momentum for the future, right? They were talking about 5 and 10 year goals of, custom dev and all these different things. I guess my question for you is how common is that, right? Are there other stories you can kind of come up with? Or
I mean, I think it is common. Every company has a different level of aggressiveness that they want to with their technology. Some are more very content with where things are as long as it's reliable and secure. Others are always hey, I'm trying to figure out how to be more productive. How am I competing against my competitors? How do I dominate them, right? So each client we work with is a little bit different, but the ones that are more strategic and aggressive about making their IT a competitive advantage, I think those are the ones that we can provide a lot more value for and give them ideas on AI and automation and new technology to implement. So I think it's kind of case by case scenario, to be honest. But I think during those ITBRs though, that's our opportunity to have those conversations and to decide what are your goals for the next 12 months, and 2 years, 3 years, and beyond, and aligning those goals with like how we can use technology to achieve that.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, as a rule, I feel like if you're only hearing from your IT provider when something breaks,
that's not a good relationship.
You got to reset your expectation in terms of what level of investment they're taking in your business success. And I think that's one of the things that as I've talked to clients, like that's a differentiator for us, right? Like it's their business, but like the better they do, the better we do. So it's got this reciprocity piece in there. And so, we want to help facilitate that. It's in our interest to help them be as efficient and profitable and secure as possible for a variety of reasons, obviously. All right. Well, really appreciate that, Phil. I think, obviously retooling, rethinking, resetting, generally speaking, I think it's just
it's a great time. It's a great time of year to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just a pathway toward success for the new year. Before we wrap up, I want to make this tangible, right? If you've stuck with us this long, which I hope you have, I want to kind of identify 3 things that I think, companies could look, in the next quarter to implement, to put this overall framework into action. So the first one I've written down is conduct a simple license and tool audit, right? Review what they're using, who's using it, how much value it's providing, sit down and do that, right? Is that difficult? Is that is that something that
it's not, no, I don't think it's like incredibly difficult. It shouldn't take that long to generate a list of like, here's everybody in the organization, here's the licenses that they're consuming.
Sure. And
then from there you can make decisions on what does this person need the greatest version of it, right? And also like you also have to keep in mind too, like as people leave, right? Your IT provider is probably aware of some of your subscriptions that you're managing, but they might not be aware of everything, right? And the IT provider probably has good policies for when someone leaves, deactivating licenses, but there might be 10 other apps out there that they're not aware of that you might buy direct, and so they don't have that visibility. But I think at least on an annual basis, going through, listing out all your licenses you use, reevaluate, does it make sense? Is this the right account that we need?
Is the same true for hardware? I mean, we're talking about
software
licenses.
To an extent, yes. I think a lot of those decisions happen when you have a refresh. Personally, I think at least that's when I notice it often, where they're like, hey, do we really need this other computer? Like we're at the end of life of it. That's usually where I see that question. But no, I think each organization is a little different. Some, will have multiple computers per person. Most organizations tend to have one. Yeah. But that's really case by case, and
Sure. So fairly low barrier to entry on that one. The second one I've written down is, sit down with a trusted professional for an alignment conversation, right? This could be in an ITBR. It's great. We're doing a lot of those right now with our partner success manager, I know. But if you don't currently have an IT provider, or if your IT provider hasn't recommended that you do that, sitting down, just trying to go through some of these practical steps that we've identified today could be really helpful. A third one I have is an AI use policy, right? Yes. That's a big one because we've had clients tell us, oh, we don't really think people are using AI, and then we do the reporting, and it's like, oh, they're using AI, right? And if they're just dumping proprietary data into these models, then it's public. They're using a free version of it. That could be potentially damaging. Yeah. So
we didn't talk a lot about that, but no, that's a really a good point. Is like a lot of your employees are already using AI, right? They're using the free version of these tools because they use them for personal.
They can.
But I don't think companies really realize that if anything that if they're using a free version, like that data is used to train the AI model. So if they're using your company data and they're submitting that into these public models, then it's plausible that data also ends up being public to other companies, right? That use that service. So what we like to see is an AI acceptable use policy deployed in the organization, and it's really just a acknowledgement of, hey, if you're going to use AI in our organization, it needs to be used only by the certain approved tools, and that they're privatized and they're not using like the free versions of these tools out there. So I think it's a very underrated thing that people are not aware of, like businesses. But I think that it's something they need to really be aware of.
That's part of that training piece we talked about, just letting people know, hey, these are the guardrails, these are the rules.
Yeah, I mean, in general, if a product is free, you're the product. I mean, that's the way it rolls.
For sure. Okay, so those are our three. If you could add one more, what might it be?
I think if you're really confident your security is great, pass on this one. But like, I think that if you have a question, if you're not really sure about your cybersecurity, I think doing a scan, doing a pen test, is a peace of mind of where you really stand. So you're at least aware of those vulnerabilities and what your risk is.
In our space, that's like the drum that everybody beats, right? I think people are probably kind of tired of it, but that doesn't mean that it's not important,
right?
Because one compromise, and I mean your business could be done, right? Whether you've lost fundamental data or you've been ransomware.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times where we've done these pen tests, and they have MFA. They say to everyone, right? And we do the audit, and we find out that maybe half the organization has MFA, but the other half doesn't. So, I mean, that's a huge gap, and you wouldn't necessarily know that unless you did a deep dive, like a pen test on that. And it just kind of gives you a report card of how you're doing. Yeah.
Well, Phil, again, we appreciate you, joining us for our first episode. Your sort of expertise and real world experience, I think, has been really valuable. If you want to hear more from Phil, head over to LinkedIn. We have a newsletter there on our company page called Hard Reboot. Subtitle is Tech Leadership from the Tech Trenches, and sort of just Phil's insight into leadership in this SMB space. We are a small, medium-sized business, right? So you've been doing it a long time. You've started other businesses as well. So feel free to check that out. If you'd like to dive deeper, though, we are finalizing a downloadable resource that you can get on our website. We're calling it the 30-Day IT Reset. Just some of the sort of a practical checklist on some of the things that we've talked about today. But yeah, so this is the Accent Consulting Show.
All right.
It's just what the internet needed, I think.
Exactly.
Probably just two more middle-aged dudes with beards talking about computers and stuff on the internet. But if you like this content, again, it's YouTube, so like and comment and subscribe and all those things just to let us know. When you take a risk like this and start something new, we don't need validation, but it would be nice, right? So just let us know about that. But until next time, we hope you have a great day, and we wish you the best of luck as you rethink, retool, and reset your expectations around IT. Thanks.